His melodies define ballet, fill concert halls, and soundtrack entire seasons. Yet behind the most emotionally powerful music ever composed was a man quietly tearing himself apart. So just how good was Tchaikovsky, really? The answer begins not on a grand stage, but in a small Russian mining town in 1840. In the shadow of the Ural Mountains, a mining engineer's house echoed with the sounds of laughter, church bells, and the soft chords of a battered piano. Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky arrived into a world shaped by the rhythms of industry and the melodies of Russian folk. His mother Alexandra played piano in the evenings, filling the family's modest rooms with simple waltzes and lullabies. On festival days, the village square came alive with songs, Ural folk tunes drifting through open windows, leaving a mark on the boy long before he could write a single note. At age 5, Pyotr's fingers found their way to the keyboard. His mother arranged lessons with Nikolai Bakhmetev, a local teacher who taught him to play by ear as much as by sight. The household piano, often out of tune, became his closest companion. He listened to the rise and fall of melodies at village weddings, absorbing harmonies from Orthodox liturgy and the laughter of folk dancers. These sounds settled deep in his memory. Family gatherings turned into private concerts. Pyotr would improvise short pieces, sometimes shyly, sometimes with a sudden boldness that surprised even himself. By 1855, he was writing his own variations on the tunes he heard around him, simple, heartfelt, and full of longing. The first seeds of his melodic gift took root not in concert halls but in the warmth of home and the wildness of provincial Russia. Every note he played carried echoes of those early days, the distant bells, the hush of a snowy evening, the gentle encouragement of a mother who believed music could heal any sorrow. St. Petersburg, 1862. Pyotr Tchaikovsky stepped through the doors of the new Conservatory, a world away from the warmth of his childhood home. Here, discipline ruled. Anton Rubinstein, the formidable director, demanded nothing less than mastery. Lessons stretched for hours, covering counterpoint, harmony, and piano technique. Rubinstein's curriculum was relentless. Students analyzed Bach fugues, dissected Beethoven's sonatas, and memorized the rules of voice leading until they became second nature. Every mistake was corrected, every shortcut denied. The Red Hall echoed with scales and arpeggios, but also with the tension of ambition. Students drilled in theory by day, then gathered at night to test their ideas in workshops and impromptu concerts. Tchaikovsky was no prodigy among prodigies. He struggled with orchestration, sometimes failing to impress his teachers. Yet he persisted, filling notebooks with sketches, pushing through hours of harmonic exercises and composition assignments. Zaremba drilled him in the strict German tradition. Rubinstein demanded clarity and elegance, never sentimentality. By 1865, Tchaikovsky was ready to step into the public eye. His characteristic dances were performed under Johann Strauss Jr., a rare honor for a student composer. The applause was polite, but the achievement was real. The Conservatory had forged his craft, giving him a technical arsenal that would soon set him apart. Behind every future melody, every sweeping ballet, lay the discipline of those years, the relentless drills, the sleepless nights, the pressure to excel. This foundation, built under Rubinstein's watchful gaze, would empower Tchaikovsky to break rules with purpose and to face the critics who believed true Russian art could never come from the classroom. His early works, steeped in the Conservatory's Western rigor, met a wall of skepticism from the self-appointed guardians of Russian music. Mily Balakirev, leader of the nationalist circle known as the Five, dismissed Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1 in 1868 with a single cutting letter. The press followed suit. Sentimentality masquerading as art, wrote one reviewer, echoing a chorus of voices who saw his melodic sweep as a betrayal of Russian purity. Public performances brought polite applause, but the reviews stung. The rejection was not just professional, it was personal, a wound that would never fully heal. Yet as doors closed in St. Petersburg, a lifeline arrived from an unexpected quarter. In 1877, Nadezhda von Meck, a wealthy widow and passionate music lover, wrote to Tchaikovsky offering her support. Her proposal was simple, a yearly stipend enough to free him from the grind of teaching and criticism on the condition they never meet in person. Their letters, exchanged in secret for more than a decade, became both confession and comfort. Von Meck's generosity allowed Tchaikovsky to compose without fear of poverty, but the arrangement carried its own price, a life lived half in the shadows, dependent on the goodwill of a stranger. Critics' scorn and von Meck's invisible hand shaped his days. Each new score was haunted by the memory of public rejection, yet fueled by the security to dream bigger. The tension between wounded pride and creative freedom would drive him to the heights and the depths of his art. July 18th, 1877. Pyotr Tchaikovsky stood beside Antonina Miliukova in a St. Petersburg registry office, signing a marriage certificate with a trembling hand. The ink was barely dry before doubts pressed in. Letters from that summer reveal a man unraveling. Pyotr confessed to friends that he felt trapped, suffocated, and unable to sleep. Antonina, bright and hopeful, seemed only to intensify his panic. Their union, born of impulse and desperation, quickly turned into a private storm. By autumn, the walls had closed in. On October 31st, Antonina filed for separation. The official record is stark. 3 months, then silence. Behind closed doors, Tchaikovsky's world collapsed. He fled the city, haunted by shame and fear, convinced he had destroyed his life and career. In letters, he described waves of anxiety and a longing for escape so fierce it bordered on self-destruction. The pain did not subside. Instead, it burrowed deep, fueling a new kind of creative urgency. Alone and isolated, he poured everything, grief, longing, self-doubt, into the only place he could trust, his music. The marriage had failed, but in its ashes a new emotional palette was born. Every note he wrote in the years that followed carried the scars of that collapse, transformed into sound that could reach where words could not. In 1877, the Bolshoi Theatre unveiled Tchaikovsky's first ballet. The music, bold and sweeping, painted a world of doomed love and supernatural beauty. Critics scoffed. They called it too symphonic, too dramatic for dancers. Yet Tchaikovsky's orchestration, those restless woodwinds and the pulsing strings, carved out a new language for ballet. The public did not understand it at first, but the melodies lingered, and when the ballet was revived years later, it became a cornerstone of the repertoire. Then a different kind of magic. The Nutcracker. Composed in 1892, this ballet spun childhood dreams into music. Tchaikovsky filled the score with sparkling celesta, playful winds, and waltzing strings. The premiere in St. Petersburg drew only modest praise, but decades later, a 1934 London revival transformed it into a holiday tradition. Now the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy is known worldwide, its delicate chimes evoking wonder and nostalgia, and then spectacle on a grand scale. The 1812 Overture, written in 1880, was a patriotic thunderclap. Tchaikovsky scored it for orchestra, choir, bells, and famously, real cannons. The first performances in Moscow stunned audiences with their sheer force. Brass blared, drums thundered, and the roar of artillery shook the concert hall. This was music as celebration, as public spectacle, a composer unafraid to fill the air with sound and fire. From the dark romance of Swan Lake, to the childlike fantasy of the Nutcracker, to the explosive triumph of the 1812 Overture, Tchaikovsky's range was astonishing. Each work reveals a master dramatist, one who could conjure heartbreak, innocence, or national pride with a single phrase. His gift was not just melody, but the power to turn orchestral color into living, breathing theatre. October 28, 1893. The Mariinsky Theatre falls silent as Tchaikovsky lifts his baton for the premiere of Symphony No. 6. The opening movement breathes a kind of sorrow rarely heard in Russian music, a melody that rises, hesitates, and dissolves into darkness. The second movement glides in 5/4 time, a waltz that feels slightly off balance, as if the ground itself is shifting. Then comes the third, an explosion of energy so triumphant that applause breaks out before the final notes have faded. But the real ending is yet to come. Instead of a grand finale, the last movement descends into a slow, aching farewell. Strings weep, brass sighs, and the music seems to mourn its own end. When the final chord vanishes, the audience sits in stunned silence. Some clap, others simply bow their heads. 9 days later, Tchaikovsky is gone. The world is left with a symphony that feels at once like a confession and a question. Yet that night in St. Petersburg was only the beginning. Early recordings of the Pathétique spread across Europe and America, capturing listeners who had never set foot in Russia. Ballet companies in Paris and New York began to stage Swan Lake and the Nutcracker year after year. And today more than 200 productions of Swan Lake fill theatres annually, and the Nutcracker has been performed over 1 million times worldwide. Orchestras from Tokyo to Buenos Aires thunder through the 1812 Overture each summer, canons or no canons. Tchaikovsky's music, born of private heartbreak, now belongs to the world. His melodies echo in concert halls, in films, in the quiet moments of people's lives. The question remains, how did one man's pain and hope become a universal language? The answer lies in the music itself, still waiting for each new listener to decide. Tchaikovsky's music still electrifies hearts in every corner of the world. His melodies break barriers of language and time, proof that raw emotion, when set to sound, never fades. In an age craving authenticity, his genius reminds us that vulnerability creates power. The echo of his soul endures. What do you hear?